Hello and welcome to this episode of Point-Counter-point. As always, we meet every week to look at issues that are contentious, that are controversial, that are worrying, and that need to be discussed in depth with a and what we need to do I'll do this again. Hello and welcome to this episode of Point-Counter-point. We are here to discuss and deliberate issues that are contentious and important for Goa, as we do so every week. This week, we meet on the eve of the World Remembrance Day for Road Traffic Victims, a day which has been adopted by the United Nations. It is also the day on which the World Cup finals are going to be played, while the entire focus of the world is, or at least India is going to be on that. Let us take some time away from that and focus on this critical issue. And the reason why this should resonate in Goa amongst Goans is also because the number of road traffic victims and their families, of course, is growing by the day, by the hour. And while we have met here several times to discuss the pattern, the extent, the need and the problems, the issue of accident, but more specifically accidents related to drunken, and I would go as far as to say substance-induced driving is growing. And the panelists here will also agree that whenever any major accident happens, the first suspicion, especially if the accident happens late at night or early morning, is that there was some driver who was intoxicated, who was behind the wheel, whose actions led to the deaths or severe injuries inflicted on innocent passerbys or people who are simply in the path of that killer machine driven by somebody who was not in the control of his or her senses. This is now in the sense that we go on talking about different kinds of statistics. We have statistics for accidents. We have statistics for drunken driving cases, which has led to death or severe injuries. But today, I have requested all the panelists if we can focus more on the ground realities and what we need to do in terms of action. Let us look at the call to action that we need immediately to ensure that there are more deterrents to this. Secondly, the issue here is we also at the same time need to look at whether the state itself is doing enough to ensure that people who go out and enjoy themselves and drink in a place like Goa, in a tourist state like Goa, also have the wherewithal to go back home safely through sustainable transport systems. The point here is that, as always, the issue gets stuck because different arms of the government or different arms of society don't act in tandem to solve and look at this. I have with me a very, very good panel of experts who've dedicated their lives to studying issues like this on the road. I would literally call it violence on the road, because at the end of the day it boils down to that, whatever be the cause. And it leads to deaths and severe injuries. It affects lives. And while we mourn the dead, I think we should also grieve as much, if not more, for the living. Because when you are maimed, when your bones get crushed, when you lose your livelihoods, when you are dependent on others for the rest of your life, it's basically a life of absolute abject misery, which is even sometimes far worse than even death. So I have with me DILIP PRABHUDESSAI, a senior member of the Movement for Amity Towards Roads in Goa, popularly known as MARG. Next to him is Mr. Roland Martins of GOACAN, needs absolutely no introduction, and of course voice and crusader on all of these things. And Advocate Moses Pinto is the author of this much acclaimed book called Practice Traffic Yoga, and he's also a columnist. Dilip, I'll start with you, and since we are speaking on drunken driving, if you can just start with the fact that why is there no deterrent and what needs to be done to have more deterrence again to prevent this?
I would first start on this note that I think there have been so many debates of this sort. I mean, we have been debating on and on,
Correct.
and nothing actually happens.
Right.
Now, who actually has to do things? People like us. Is it us? Is it NGOs? Is it activists who have to do, or is it the government that has to do something?
Right.
I mean, recently, I think in 2022, there was a meeting called by the CM and the Transport Minister, and they promised to implement something. What has been done about it? It is up to the people, I think, to ask, because today we are in Goa, where the government says that you come to Goa to drink,
Right.
and then what do? Once you drink, how do you go home? Is there a system in Goa where somebody who is drunk, who is not in his senses, is there a valet system? Is there any sort of system which is implemented by the government to ensure that the tourist reaches home safely?
Right.
Not just the tourists, it's the bystanders, as you said, who have to reach home safely.
Correct.
So basically, what is the government doing? What is the transport department doing? What is the CM himself who promised so much that they're doing? That is the question I think we have to ask. Debates are fine, but what does the government listen to us talking? That is what is most important, I feel.
Correct. One of the reasons why, you know, that you've also been crusading again and again is that there are rules and there are regulations, there are committees, there are subcommittees. But overall, broadly speaking, again, I'll get back to the whole issue of deterrence.
Yeah.
My point is, now he has flagged the idea that government is doing nothing.
Yeah.
If you can just specify where the deterrence can come from.
Yeah. So as we have discussed in the earlier sessions
Yes.
over here, I think what is happening is that in terms of notifications, in terms of recommendations of the Supreme Court Committee on Road Safety,
Yeah.
things are in place.
Right.
Now the problem comes of the mechanisms that have to be set up
Right.
at delivery at the last mile
Right.
level, and where you know, there is some kind of accountability and transparency. So we have been from GOACAN repeatedly saying at all the meetings that
Right.
you need, okay, you cannot do everything together,
Right.
but one thing at a time. Like we have submitted, made a representation that at least put the traffic police system, you know, on a separate website, upload all the details of whatever is happening, which are the cases which have happened, you know, what is the status of those cases in the courts, you know, which talukas they've happened. So people start to, you know, take responsibility for it. Right now, as DILIP has pointed out, yes, it is the government, but if you look at it, there are 191 panchayats, there are 14 municipalities, there are gram sabhas, you know. So if that discussion is going to, you know, come down at a local level, I think that the need of the hour is put this data in public domain.
Right.
And as much as like how many alcometers are available,
Right.
in which police station they have the maintenance AMCs for them in place.
Correct. Yes.
How many speed riders are there? So this kind of, you know, even the level of infrastructure, I think that's required today.
Yeah, but talking about alcometers before I come to Moses, see, the issue here is that now, what is your information? Is there enough alcometer? Are there enough alcometers? Does every police station have an alcometer? Because the issue here is, if you look at anywhere in Goa, and we look at the, say, tourist infested Bardes, for instance, where you have the maximum number of clubs and hotels and restaurants and nightclubs and all that. Now, one doesn't find any nakabandi happening where you have, and you don't have a single person coming to you with an alcometer to test you.
So I think the point here, Sujay, is that the public, society also has that responsibility. See, we are responding to a certain situation. First it was Banastari, now maybe the Vagator incident has happened, and there's a reaction, there's a drive, and back again you see. I think the deterrent has to be such that it's regular. Every weekend has to be a weekend where there will be nakabandis. There's no question about it. Because everybody knows that people are flying in on Friday, spending the weekend and going. So there's a certain pattern. So if that pattern at least is tackled for the next 3 months, or let's take, if he is starting on Monday, if the fact that if he is there's going to be so many people coming down, let something be done around that, and then one can analyze and say, okay, have you been successful? Failure, what is the thing?
No, but I would just like to make a point. That so much has been talked about it, so much probably has been done or not done, I don't know. But nothing has happened. And if what the result has been zero. So what I feel is we have to rethink. We have to go back to zero and rethink about what we have been doing. It's very obvious that what the government and what everybody has been doing has been a failure. Because things have not improved. So what is it that has to be done? I mean, as Roland said, iffy. Let's have something out of the box for IFI. Let's restrict it to IFI, the IFI area, but let the government come up with something that absolutely deters people from even thinking about alcohol if you're driving.
Right. Just to one example, I would say, there was the first time as part of the State Road Safety Week, there was a documentary competition. Very good films have been produced, documentaries by Goan producers. If those can be screened at the IFI pavilion, it's something to begin with, so everybody realizes that road safety is a real issue.
Advocate Pinto, you've been patiently listening. The issue here is, of course, one aspect is, are we doing enough to stop drunken driving? Secondly, are we using the law properly, or is the system even interested in using the law properly? And anything else that you would like to say, essentially on the fact that the water has gone above everybody's heads. There are far too many deaths happening.
Well, thank you for having me. I would agree with our esteemed panelist about the aspect that the law has been deficient in certain aspects of implementation, but that does not mean that the law is unavailable or is not present. The most important aspect which I foresee is an elitist theory that surrounds the tourism culture in Goa, and that involves a group of tourists or party goers, revelers, entering the state and hiring an automobile, most probably a four-wheeler or a two-wheeler in the form of a scooter, and then they utilize this automobile to go around different parts of Goa, and they engage in consumption of alcohol. Of course, once the alcohol is consumed, you have the aspect of BAC, which is blood alcohol concentration, and not every person knows what is the aspect of their tolerance limit towards alcohol. So this ends up misjudging the road conditions and making bad judgments while driving or riding. Ultimately, when the mishap occurs and the negligence is attributed in a contributory manner not only to the person who's inebriated and riding or driving the vehicle, but also to the person who supposedly came in front of that vehicle. The most important aspect which needs to be delved into here is that the accident which occurs is not in fact an accident, but it is a crime.
That's right.
And the culpability always needs to be attributed or ascribed to the person who's in the motorized vehicle, who's, as you said, as you rightly pointed out, this is turning out to be a machine of death. In the same manner, the onus of taking away, or rather proving that the person who was driving, who caused the accident, was not guilty of having done it, should be placed on the driver or rider himself or herself, rather than, what happens is, Section 185 of the Motor Vehicles Act, the old act, governs inebriated driving. And what happens here is the whole aspect of guilt is not focused upon, because the in charge of a police station can directly, upon his own recognizance, requisition a personal bond from the person who has been engaged in a road crash and release that person within 24 hours of producing the personal bond. And the personal bond does not go for more than between 10,000 to 25,000 rupees. Now, we know for a fact that a person's life, if lost on the road, is not worth 10,000 or 25,000 rupees, it's worth much more. And the multiplier which the Supreme Court ascribes to the person's livelihood and his future earnings, if he were alive, would be far higher. But now this person has tragically lost his life, leaving behind dependents.
That's right. Yes.
And everything has happened because the cause being alcohol-induced or substance-induced driving.
Right.
What I propose is a more stringent interpretation of the law, and that is, instead of getting the personal bond requisition at the police station before the in charge of the police station, why not ascribe judicial scrutiny to the issuance of bail or to the issuance of the release of the person?
But Dodar, would that be guilty until proven innocent, something of that sort. I mean, as it is, you have so many cases of when an accident happens, the bystanders, there have been cases of them assaulting the driver and all that, just on the assumption that he must be drunk.
Now, it is not about an assumption that he is drunk or he is inebriated under any substance. The fact that he or she in this scenario has caused injury, has caused loss to another person's limb or his life, that itself is sufficient not only to generate public ire, but also to generate the prosecution or the the criminal justice machinery to start upon this person's negligence.
But would this need some sort of legislation, or what
the legislation is not required? The legislation is present. It is the implementation which the state government has the prerogative to implement it in a way where the decision making of release, where the decision making of trial, where the ascribing of guilt has been made so stringent that a person, even if he tries to get out of it, would have to undergo a series of checks and balances to ensure that he is actually not
but would it be injustice to a driver who is not inebriated and there's been a genuine mistake?
Those are the
because
safeguards.
What I'm coming to is, basically we are focusing on the driver. The condition of roads in Goa, I mean, they must be the most unsafe roads in Goa. Because just for example, if you reach, while going to Margao today, if you're going to Margao, at the end of that 4-lane expressway or whatever, there's that new construction going on. There is absolutely no signboard there or anything saying that 100 meters from here the road is, I mean, there's a diversion or anything. There's absolutely nothing. Just because, I mean, I don't know why there aren't more accidents. The conditions of the road are such. PWD, I feel, has given up on road engineering. There is no road engineering, there is no road safety. There are no guidelines that they follow. I mean, so a genuine person who might not be blamed. The accident might have happened because of the road. Even in such a condition, the driver would be unjustly, No,
I'll quickly respond and then of course allow Moses to do the same. See, what Advocate Moses is saying, he is not saying that you allow a person to, you allow an innocent person to get caught and allow the guilty to get away. What he probably is attempting to say is that don't make it so easy for a police person at a police station to release him immediately on a bond of 10,000.
That's
fine. Basically increase the level of difficulty for somebody who has caused an accident to
but somebody who has caused an accident because of inebriated driving under the influence.
No,
so the basic thing is we are coming back to is the alcometer.
No, Dilip,
the availability of these devices.
No, what he mentioned 185. Now 185 doesn't cover only drunken driving. He is talking of any kind of accident.
I understand.
Actually, I would like to quote Lord Denning here, and that is, "Be ye not so high that the law is beneath you." So let us just go by that scenario.
No, I agree, but I'm just looking at the other side.
And secondly, we have another quote which is commonly used in criminal law, and that is, "Let 100 guilty go scot-free, but let not a single innocent be charged wrongly."
Exactly.
But in this scenario, let us also take into account that the law of torts considers that when a person steps onto the road, he assumes the risk. And a person who assumes the risk should be prepared for either way, should be prepared for facing the circumstances of damage or of
being a victim too,
or of being culpable anyway.
No, I agree on one thing. If it's a deterrent, if it turns out to be a deterrent and in the right direction, definitely it's got to be welcomed. But again, as we were discussing, isn't it some way the prosecution also fails at some stage as the trials go on in such cases?
The prosecution is run by the DOP, the Directorate of Prosecution. The prerogative rests with the Home Department. That portfolio is being held by the CM presently. So ultimately, the direction which it chooses would be based to some extent, to some stratified extent, it would be based on stakeholder interest. And the stakeholder interest indirectly prompts towards the electorate. And this again prompts towards who wants to a second term or a third term in office. So, if you are going to politicize the issue,
no, it's not a question of politicizing.
No, can I intervene? See, what I think is important is that recently I was at a program at Vasco, and the chairperson and few of the councillors there, I appreciate the fact that at least publicly they said that we are not going to take any phone call from any of our own electorate who says, you know, I've been caught, you please take care of it. Now, I think this is happening because in Vasco, one town, there have been a series of serious crashes, underage driving has resulted in deaths, and I think it has created a reflection. Now, somebody may say, okay, it's, you know, public meeting, you say something, go. But I think that process has already started, and I think we need to, instead of just looking at the state as the government in, you know, the party that rules or the government in place, it ultimately boils down to the local panchayat, local municipal council, as well as every MLA also is definitely responsible as a policy maker. The point I would like to re-emphasize, no, as Moses pointed out here, is, you know, data also is not available. I will just give one example. I was reading a newspaper and I saw that a father lost his 15-year-old son in an accident and was hit and run case. He spent 8 years just pursuing the matter. He found a broken piece of the mirror and some part of the car. He kept on and was be able to go to the manufacturer, go to garages, and finally the case has started. Now, let's take the hit and run cases only.
Right.
Where is the data? How many hit and run cases have been there in Goa? Taluka wise, district wise, what is the status? You know. So I think one important stakeholder is society. See, whichever party may come to power and coalition or whatever, society, I think, has to start getting involved, because there are processes. You know, people are, as much as there is so much concern about the environment, you know, and PILs and so much litigation is also happening there. If you look at the litigation that's happening in these cases, you can't even hear of it. So
I think I was just reading this paper, this research article. It is titled "The Automobiles Taught Law Legacy," and this is in a journal called the Wake Forest Review. So here I will just read out a small excerpt which probably can answer or rather solve the conundrum which you have prescribed, and that is an ambitious experiment with no fault compensation. The idea for no fault compensation for auto accidents, which is to say compensation for injured motorist, which would skip the processes above and would be supplied quickly and easily irrespective of fault, has been around for more than a century. As early as 1919, one commentator discussed the need to eliminate entirely the question of negligence in motor vehicle accidents, while another, writing on the heels of the successful enactment of workers' compensation, published a proposal to extend the compensation principle to accidents on the street. So what happens here? Auto no fault is a system where, irrespective of the negligence of the allegedly errant driver or rider, the person who has suffered loss, who has been maimed, he is automatically compensated by the state. And this, of course, then becomes the liability is then pressed upon the third party insurer of the errant driver or rider, as well as on the errant driver or rider personally, himself or herself. Recently, the Supreme Court, this was in October 2023, recently they affirmed a very similar principle to no fault liability. And since you brought up hit and run, I would just like to mention this. There was a scheme for compensation for hit and run cases, which was last revised by the Union government in 2022, when compensation for death cases was increased from 25,000 to 2 lakhs rupees for death, and for injuries from 12,500 to 50,000. The Supreme Court, which comprised of 2 justices, noted that though section 161 provides for interim compensation, the center has not incorporated it in the 2022 scheme. And they have then further gone on to say, we will recommend center use its rule making power to provide for interim compensation, as this machinery will not work unless there is interim relief.
Okay.
So ultimately what happens is the implementation is lacking or deficient. But the law is very much in place. We have section 161 for hit and run. We have enhanced compensation.
See, based on what he said, one interesting thing is if we look at the infamous Banastari incident, which took place in August. Now, interestingly, what did the High Court do? The High Court used its wisdom, and in its wisdom said that the alleged accused needs to cough up a sum of 2 crores, and that amount will be distributed. From the humanitarian ground, I am sure it was a good move to make. But the issue is that there is no set system, or there is a set system, as Advocate Moses has said. But ultimately, there is no implementation of it. In the sense that as he rightly pointed out, compensation should come from the state. If you need to recover it from the alleged accused and give it, that's a different part. But the point is, the state should primarily compensate victims, and that is what is not happening.
We are talking about compensation which is after the accident.
Correct.
Now, after Banastari,
yes,
what steps has anybody taken to prevent another Banastari?
That is true. That's why.
That's I think that's the crux of the matter.
So Dilip, I think there are 2 things here. See, every panchayat now has been notified to have a road safety committee. Municipality has been notified. See, we have to look at responsibility in governance across the state at all levels.
Yes,
and absolutely. I think the time has come. Now, that accident has taken place in a way. There are 3-4 areas involved. There are people from Diwar who got affected.
Correct.
There are the drivers were from Panjim, Karanzane, whatever. The accident happened at Banastari. So, if you look at it, it's a multi-pronged kind of thing. Now, I will give you an example. There was a senior engineer from your municipal council in Margaon, whose car is parked outside his house as Marshala. There's heavy ore laden truck comes, topples, crushes his car. Okay, and just by luck, it was a little late, so nobody. Otherwise, there's a group of people always chatting in the evening there. Now, after I saw that incident, and they said the 2 temples would have been affected. I wrote, okay, it is maybe 2 months have passed. I just got a call before I came now that the PWD and police have fixed up a site inspection on Wednesday, which I will go to in the afternoon. Now, my point is that, see, if this process starts taking place, where road engineering in every panchayat, every municipality, what you are saying is very true. See, contractors are coming and doing shoddy job.
Absolutely.
Correct? Now, a municipality and a panchayat has a right to stop the guy. They have the powers, they have the bylaws, they have everything at their disposal to act. Whether it's a national highway, district highway, major district road or whatever. So, I think the problem here, all stakeholders need to look at what responsibility is there. Take for example the alcohol, coming back to drunken driving. The alcohol industry has to also take responsibility. Yes. I have not seen a single hoarding anywhere in Goa by any alcohol company which says drink responsibly. And you know that the sales are booming in a place like Goa because of the festive season the next 3 months. At least you don't have permanent hoardings, you put temporary hoardings.
Yeah, I think I just want to add one thing. So from what Roland has said, it is up to the citizen now to go after his local punch or his local councillor. If there is some shoddy road work in his ward or in front of his house or wherever, it's the local punch or the local councillor who should be forced to act.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I was not aware. I was myself was not aware.
Now, just to give an example, if you look at the day that we are going to observe on Sunday, it started with an organization called Road Peace in a small place, small NGO. It started, but it created such an impact. The consistency is, I think, very important. That you build pressure on all sectors of society, all stakeholders to say, boss, road safety is everybody's business.
Absolutely.
And this has to happen. And I think in discussions like this, we need to re-emphasize that point. That's
okay. I'd like to draw your attention or discuss and bring the debate discussion back also to drunken driving a bit, because that's one fundamental reason why we are here. You mentioned some amazingly good and important points. Now, with regard to having more deterrence against drunken driving or to prevent drunken driving, especially in a place like Goa, don't you feel a massive focus needs to be done in the northern belt, the northern party belt? Because there are two fundamental premises which I'd like you to respond to. One is that we market Goa as a massive party destination or a entertainment destination. There are far more bars and restaurants and even medicine shops, I would say. Okay. Then there is no restriction, literally no restriction on the closing time, though there is an official restriction, but they go on till the VR, especially evening. Now the issue is that with so many people coming here and getting into watering holes and drinking and so on and so forth, there is absolutely no management of that crowd which goes back and how they I mean I'm reflagging points that we've already raised. Ultimately, unless we bring about a solution to this, it will not happen. Because if you see the number of drunken driving cases in say Kankon or Kurtori or Perne and Shandor is negligible compared to Purvari and upwards. So there is a direct correlation. Yes. So some thoughts of yours and what could be a call to action for this?
Well, I see two options that are open to the law enforcement. But first I would like to draw the attention of the public and to everyone here to the aspect of rent a car and rent a bike. Now these services, in my opinion, do not benefit the revenue or the exchequer to the extent desirable.
Right. Agreed.
But at the same time, it is always advertised as an access which is provided towards the tourist, and this in turn harnesses tourism, the revenues from tourism. I do not see the nexus in how enabling a drunken tourist to operate an automobile in our state and enabling him to use that machine of so-called machine of death in our state is a reasonable practice, thus endangering the lives of the residents of the state. So there has to be a sort of checks and balances as to who's going to be the designated driver when the vehicle is being given out on rent. I have never ever come across any kind of regulation which the cops have enforced upon the rental agencies, the rental car and rental bike agencies, wherein they are able to check who is the car being let out to and ultimately who's going to be responsible. Because you might have recollected, there was an incident where a young boy lost his life on Karmal Ghat. He was 19 years old.
Right.
Could a 19-year-old have the judgment necessary to actually navigate the Ghat, that too along with occupants, in an unknown model of a car which he has got in his hand for the first time? This is where the lack of judgment comes into play. I feel that the policy of rental agencies needs to be looked into once again and remodeled so as to ensure that there is greater scrutiny of who's going to be the designated driver. The second aspect, when it comes to vehicles which are driven from out of the state into Goa, I feel that it would be reasonable to impose a curfew, especially during the peak season of festivities. Impose a curfew upon the plying of vehicles from registered out of state. Impose a curfew upon them from plying on the roads from a designated time, that is from sundown to sunrise.
Okay.
Because ultimately, see, if you call yourself a tourist and you come here for sightseeing, you come here to take in the culture, you are not come here to actually practice hedonism. If you want to practice hedonism, you have to go to a casino, you have to go to a specific club and do the things you intend to do. It's not, the road is not meant for hedonism, the road is not meant for pleasure seeking or pleasure driving.
Good point. But my devil's advocate question here would be, the person who wants to practice hedonism and go to a particular place to dance, to drink, have food and come back and party, has to commute from his hotel or place of residence to that particular place and come back. So what happens then? Because at the end of the day, he needs to be transported. So if he is behind the wheels in that state, obviously he's a danger to everybody else. So how does he get transported from place A to the place where he has to enjoy himself?
So I would like to point out the reason running this 8-day campaign and highlighting the last day of the campaign is the first observation of the World Sustainable Transport Day. I think it's a right time to raise the question, what are we providing the tourists or people who have their bikes to say, okay, I will use some sort of other public transport. Right now, the present discussion is about the existing bus services which are operating as city buses in Panjim, going up to Donapal, Karanale, Taligaon, are going to be moved out, and you are going to have the EV buses coming under the smart city.
But will that be a solution?
So I'm just pointing out that this is being the focus now. Whereas all over Goa, see, people have to travel after 8 o'clock. What are the bus services there are? Even from the Margaon railway station to come to KTC bus stand.
And do you expect a party goer going to any of these nightclubs to get onto a bus and come back?
Yes,
it's not practical.
So there has to be a discussion has to start now. Is how are we going to address these issues? See, the fact that we are a party destination is already settled. There's no way that's going to be changed. Mopa Airport is going to bring more people. There's no doubt. These things are already there. Now the question that has to be discussed and debated is, what is the system we are going to adopt? Is pool car going to be the system? Are going to be designated vehicles like shuttles going to operate? Something has to be there in this.
Okay, I'll just allow Dr. Moses to Advocate Moses to quickly respond to my supplementary question, and then I'll ask him, and then I'll ask him.
Actually, Mr. Gupta, what I've come across in your statement in advocating for in favor of the tourists being able to go around Goa in the night time to their designated places of what you say of enjoyment, is that alcohol is presumed to be in the equation.
Yes, of course.
Yes,
of course.
So
the issue is, and these
you
are
can't get
practical
away from it. I
realities.
don't think you can get away from that.
See, my issue is, if you look at any of the places where which are major tourism centers, I mean, or even major world cities. You look at London, New York, Los Angeles, or here we see Bombay, Bangalore, and other places. Why is that problem not so much in these places? Because they have an effective app-based tourist taxi services, and you can call for these at any point of time. My issue is, here we are not. The solution is not to say that do not drink. That is another subject altogether. I mean, that's another social responsibility that you need to take care of. You cannot overdrink and come back and be a nuisance. That's a different aspect. I mean, I agree that there is a separate discussion around it. I am essentially saying, when people come here to Goa, we cannot say that, look, you come to Goa, but do not drink. I mean, that is not practical. We have to look at solutions that are practical.
I would dissent. It is practical. Take, for instance, metaphorically speaking, a flight from Barcelona to Ibiza, or to Palmas. The whole flight of 180 passengers on a regular Airbus is filled with partygoers and revelers who want to see the island.
Sure.
They are even offered alcohol on the plane on the way to the destination. Think about it. The pilot, if he were inebriated and then operating the aircraft, how would the passengers react?
No, but tell me, the issue here is that, I don't think that quite applies to what we are trying to say here. My point is, suppose a group of tourists come here, okay, and we are all friends coming together. The point is, okay, in Bangalore and other places, I'm not disagreeing with your designated driver thing.
Absolutely.
I'm saying that designated driver thing is practical. I'm not saying you don't do it. But suppose there is a group where you do not have a designated driver. Okay, we call it an irresponsible group. But the point is to ensure that irresponsible group does not act irresponsibly and harmfully. You have to have a cab service.
I would like to point out that how did the designated driver thing come in?
Right.
Because all these cities started a campaigns against drunken driving. There used to be at the local places, their names used to be flashed on the billboards. So there was a shaming. There was shaming of the drunken driver. That is why these groups, people who used to go out, found a solution.
And then,
so basically, again, now there is no deterrent here.
No, that's why I said, one of the main points that we have put in this campaign of 8 days is to keep highlighting to all agencies, we need a website with all this data put up front. See, the other guys who are driving their Thar, I think, vehicle on the beach. Okay, you see in all the papers they've carried the photograph with those 3 guys in front.
Right.
The mug shots are there. So whether they come from Delhi, Rajasthan or whatever, let people know.
Okay, there's another point I'd like to...
The point here is, this data is not put out. So people are not being shamed. You have guys who are repeatedly, people whose license have expired. The Vagator incident is the best example. 10 years you are here, you operate with a vehicle which is having a out of state number plate. Look at the way it's happened. So even today you can't stand in front of your own reception counter and be safe. Now this is where I'm saying we need to start looking at what's happening with the system. Look at the size of the number plate. You stand at any traffic signal. The number plates has become like a joke. So what I'm saying is that there is a law in place. You have to have a number plate which can be recognized. And if you're going to have the smart city cameras going to recognize that number plate, it has to be the specific size.
I'd like to introduce...
this deterrent is not there.
Okay. One more aspect I'd like to introduce. See, in this entire discussion, all of us are assuming, I don't know whether rightly or wrongly, that drunken driving is done only by tourists who come here.
No.
The issue here is that why don't we look inwards and look at ourselves, all of us who live in Goa.
Absolutely.
How do you handle that? I mean, how do you look at people who are living in Goa and going out to party in their own cars and their own bikes and also posing?
No, but I think the problem
is... The designated driver thing works. What you said is important.
So Sujay, the Zuari bridge incident is a clear example.
Absolutely. Correct.
So again what I'm saying, what is the learning? See, the learning from all of this is, therefore my point is back again, the notified in October last year, it was notified that the subcommittees at all police stations with the PWD will go to the site of the accident, prepare their accident report and make it public. The point I'm saying is all these incidents have become a big media splash. Everybody's got very upset, then everybody's forgotten. We have to learn lessons from all these accidents and these incidents and to say what has gone wrong.
Yeah, what is your response?
Well, traditionally, I have always recollected of this understanding that a person who's off the locality would not want to endanger the life and property and limb of himself or of the people he knows around him. So some degree of responsibility does occur.
Yes.
Of course, the Zuari bridge incident was an eye-opener.
Yes.
I would agree with that. But again here, we are not able to understand why there was no control or between crossing districts.
Correct.
North to south, you cross a district, there is no curfew, there is no check post.
Right.
There is no alcometer once again in force. But think about it in a different sense. In the West, you have the concept of giving the bartender the authority to judge whether the consumer is in a position to drive or not. So the practice is that you drop your keys in a bowl, and the bartender decides if you have had one too many. If you're what do you say?
There are signs of inebriation.
If you're not looking right, or if it looks like you are physically inebriated, then you're not handed over your keys back.
Right.
And you're given the time off to cool down or to sober up once again. Why can't this practice be imposed?
The practical reality is, suppose you were to leave your car there, you do not have any other transport to go back home. So what do you do? So again we are coming back to the infrastructure that needs to be put in place. His point is very valid.
So Sujay, but would that happen in Goa?
No.
Will that happen? Will the bartender, he'll give you one more.
Sujay, I think, see, we have also become very pessimistic about everything. And I do agree.
I think we have a right to be there. You have a right to be there.
I do agree. Now, but let me come back to this whole thing of the role of the excise department. 1.5 years ago, I moved a proposal that in every bar, you will say, put a notice that don't drink and drive. Now, I knew this is going to be a very difficult thing to implement. But it went through, the commissioner issued the order. They started putting computer printouts. Now you look at it, the guy who is pissed is going to first go and tear that. Now, I knew it would happen and I wanted that report to happen. And I reported back at the meeting that, look boss, this is not going to work. So, a fresh order was issued. Fine. And now you can see very prominently in many places there are these, either laminated or whatever, don't drink and drive. Now some people laugh, what is this? This is going to change the situation.
I have a suggestion.
No, my point is, see, if you look at how societies have changed and improved, we have to understand with 451 years of colonization, we are now going to correct in 70 years, so many things that we have happening in Goa. So suddenly, it's not going to happen. We have to start putting systems in place, and that's why my point here at this discussion is that we need to put systems in place. It's going to be difficult, but if Gram Sabha start discussing it, municipal council start discussing, Baba, what is our role, what is our responsibility in all this, things are going to change. See, the blame game will carry on. Every department is, even right now, is trying to push it. PWD say, that fellow, this fellow, it's going on. But for the first time, at least I would say, because of the Supreme Court Road Safety Committee, there is a lead agency. How effective or not is a different matter. But in that lead agency, 4 or 5 departments have been brought on board. My point is that having this already there, where can we take it forward? Yeah. How can excise department take responsibility of calling a meeting of all the alcohol companies and the liquor, the tavern, the bar owners association? How can we work together? But see, it's not about saying don't drink or shut down the bars. At one point of time, if your bar was near the highway, there was a Supreme Court discussion. Yes. Then they created a maze that you go round and round and still say, I've not reached the bar. So, so there are things in the country which work like this. But my point is that we have achieved something. Can we take it forward? And I think the next 3 months are very crucial. Okay. Before the elections, before the next assembly session that happens, can we put something across to the MLAs, rightly, wrongly, whether they will do or not do, it's a different matter. But I think the time has come that we need to put some positive issues across very clearly what needs to be done, whether it's alcometers, whether it's about the bar timings, whether it's about, rent a cab or whatever. These and I would request if Sujay, if you all can in the next 8 days.
Sure.
Every day run an issue, yes. Focus on it, let people write in, give email IDs, of the various departments, let them write. We have to, the reader also have to take responsibility, the viewer has to take responsibility. It's not at the end of the discussion, very good, the panelists were excellent, but I'm not going to do anything.
There's another point I'd like to flag. He mentioned it very briefly. Yeah. You see, what happens is that one has seen that many of these drunken drivers or people who drink and drive, you see liquor bottles lying in their car. Yes. Now, very often they pick up these liquor bottles from highway wine shops. Yes. Okay. Now, highway wine shops also don't seem to have any time of closing. They were supposed to close at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock. I know for a fact that they are open till 10, 10:30, 11. And
maybe even later.
Even later you can go in front of the wine shop, you honk twice, somebody
comes out from the back.
So the issue is that there is a proper system, especially on these highways, on the Ponda highway, other highways, everywhere, you can pick up alcohol anytime you want. Now the issue is that also there needs to be some kind of a deterrent there, because people can pick up alcohol at any point of time and drink. And the presence of liquor bottles, you see either in the Banastari case or many other cases, when you search a car like that, more often than not you have beer or other alcohol bottles in the car. So I'll just take all your, Dilip, I'll start with you and go this way.
So I think basically whatever suggestions and all that are fine, but coming down to looking at the whole thing from through the eyes of a common citizen, what is the traffic police doing? I mean, the first, what you would call it, the mover in this thing should be the traffic police, the traffic constable, right from the constable up to whichever higher officer. Right. Have they been given any special training how to deal with drunken driving cases? What is the sort of evidence they have to collect if there has been the accident? Even if they stop some driver who appears to be under the influence, do they have the mandate to check his car for bottles or whatever? Have they been trained in any way? Because the common citizen always says that traffic police are only challaning people, only collecting fines. They don't seem to have the attitude that they also have to prevent accidents. Have they been, has that been instilled into them? That one of their duties is also to prevent accidents, not just rush to the spot after the accident is happened. That's a very important thing, I feel, right down to the ground zero, as I say.
Right. Roland, in your work that you do, this whole aspect of checking for drunken driving, this alcometer system, what is the ground reality? Are there enough alcometers? Are they effective?
See, the way I would put it is, right now the entire onus, as Dilip was saying, is on the traffic police. But I think, like from my own experience in the road safety campaigns, when we started going out with the traffic police and transport officials standing there, it created a big difference. Lots of people, whether it was seat belt, whether it's helmets, etc. So I'm saying what, wherever these Nakabandis are to be there, let citizens come and stand with them.
Important.
Okay? There is a whole traffic warden scheme of the traffic police. Let it be popularized. I know recently one of the channels showed one of the wardens active in Porvorim, who's been there for a number of years, contributing his time. I think the time has come that we need these joint actions to be done, and even get the excise officials to be part of it. Because if this wine, whatever is available, find out from where it came. See, the problem here is we have the effectivity is lost because each department is sought to act on its own.
Right.
I think the time has come that citizens and civil society is to demand. And this 7-8 days is a good time to build this campaign, that it has to be a joint effort. Not that we are going to be successful, in putting an end to the whole thing, but definitely we'll move a step forward from where we have come. I personally have seen in the last 2 years, lots of things positively has happened. Okay, even about release of money and spending of money, which it was tight-fisted. But I think it has to come in public domain, and I think this is where the role of the media comes. Put it in public domain, let people know what's really available, what needs to be done. I think this is the time.
See, in the last segment, Moses, we can just talk about a little bit of what Roland just said. What can citizens do? Do you also feel that there needs to be a strong citizens movement? How do we take this movement forward? And how can citizens participate in this rather than being complainants? Let them be a part of the solution.
Well, first and foremost, I foresee a scientific method which I would like to suggest today, and that involves, it is quite obvious that a person has a certain body weight, and it is quite obvious that we know how BAC works, blood alcohol content, that after a certain number of hours the alcohol level in the bloodstream would be at 0.30, and then it starts going upward before coming back down again. If it can be through a circular or a notification, if it can be promulgated, that only a certain number of alcoholic drinks would be rationed out or sold in a rationed manner to the people who intend to consume them, understanding that this is the least probable amount based on which a person's judgment is marred, or that he is still able to function properly.
So practically, are you suggesting that a bartender or a bar owner will restrict the sale of drinks to people?
It's not a matter of doing it voluntarily. It is a matter of doing it mandatorily by the state, upon imposing it upon the licensees, who are the licensees of the excise department.
You are saying tough times call for tough measures. You are saying since we have not improved, we need to take these measures because nothing else seems to be working. So this is one strong way to
one of the
get
aspects.
But how will the tourism industry react to this? I mean,
so it's a suggestion on his part.
It's a suggestion, but it has to be practical.
See, Dilip, I think the point is, tourism industry also needs to take responsibility. I checked the tourism website today. You look at the drowning cases also. I have taken up the campaign on drowning right from Kodar, Darbandara. I have gone to these places. I have seen what is happening. People are getting drowned similarly. As in there's a reason, because when you say come 365 days and jump in that waterfall, okay, you're not taking action to say you got to have don't take alcohol, wear a life jacket, nothing. Okay, people are so-called influencers on social media saying you can have the best time in a laterite stone quarry. Now, what I am trying to say is the tourism department has not cracked down on this. You have to say this is not acceptable. So, my point is that we need to raise the benchmark for these departments to say this is what you have to do. And my personal belief and my personal experience is it has worked. If more people can do it, we have a slogan, I can, you can, we all can with GOACAN. Now, the point I am saying is everybody starts contributing, I think we are going to achieve it. The point here is that we need to build that pressure, and the time has come. See, today people are saying we should have the national games every time in Goa. If he is already here with so many events, what is going to happen in the days to come? Therefore, my point is here, even media can play a huge role in this. Get the alcohol industry on board, get the tourism industry on board, get institutes like Goa Institute of Management, all professional organizations come and talk. Look, It's a reality, and I'm telling you, it's not going to be that only a poor man is going to die or a middle class person is going to die. Anybody can be taken off the road with this kind of scenario. And I think, as you rightly pointed out, tough times call for tough measures.
One last point.
Reclassification is what I would propose. Take for instance the NDPS Act. In the NDPS Act there is a schedule which speaks about commercial quantity and personal quantity.
Yes.
Now, X number of grams of a certain substance is treated as a personal quantity. If alcohol can be reclassified as a neurotoxin, because it actually acts upon your nerves, if it can be reclassified and then regulated, then because see, ultimately the ambit of section 185 is wide in its amplitude, where it not only relates to alcohol but all inebriating substances. And if the NDPS Act is read synergistically with the 185 and the NDPS read together, what happens is you get the quantities fixed which can be held or possessed by a person. In the same way, why can't alcohol also be regulated?
Okay, because we have to cut you short only because we are way out of time, otherwise we could have gone on. Okay, before we conclude this, there are a couple of thoughts one has. And one is that, we are sitting in Goa and having this discussion, and there's a tinge of helplessness also because of the extent to which this has happened. All we need to say is that, look, let's compare the situation in Goa to other metropolitan and other big cities in India. Why do we not talk about this in other cities? And especially, why do we not have this problem to this extent in other capitals and other cities and towns of the world? That is primarily because there is an inherent fear that the law will pounce on you as soon as you get out of this bar or even get out of your home.
Right.
And the point is that there's absolutely no fear. But elsewhere in the world, whether you go to the biggest cities in the world, where even a millionaire or even the president of the country or the prime minister of the country or a minister is literally scared of the law catching up upon him. You had sons of presidents and prime ministers being fined, their licenses taken away, they being penalized. So the point here is that until and unless the people going out to drink realize that, look, after I finish this evening or finish about 2 or 3 drinks, I cannot get into the car and drive and I cannot go home, that inherent fear needs to be completely taken out. The other aspect that one has to say along with this is that if a person goes out to drink abroad and he knows that he cannot drive, he or she has not one option but several options to go home on a sustainable public transport. Now, my point is, if these two things do not come together, we will go round and round. Some of the points raised by Advocate Moses are important. For them to be practical, you need an enabling infrastructure system also to come into place. So I think these are issues. The point here is that as far as stopping drunken driving is concerned, Goa is an absolute banana republic with laws that are flouted left, right and center, with absolutely nobody who is bothered. And the person who is under the influence of alcohol still knows that he has some influence to protect him from the law. That is the issue. The person under influence of alcohol knows that some other influence will get him out. So until and unless that is stopped, then this whole issue of drunken driving will just be a merry conversation around a fireplace, and we'll come back again and again to do this. But nevertheless, I think some very important points have come. All three of you have raised them. The participation of citizens and the awareness of citizens is also very important. But I think all parts of society and all parts of government need to get together. Finance, economy, tourism, safety, all these aspects have to be put into one pot and a good solution. A genie needs to come out to solve all this. But anyway, thanks to all the panelists for spending their time and giving us some very valuable suggestions. Thank you.